Morning, everyone. We're going to get underway right on time here. We've got a lot to talk about, and we have got record-breaking attendees expected to show up today. So we don't want to waste a single moment. So I want to start off by saying that we are respectfully hosting this session from the unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, the Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish nations. And we're certainly very grateful for that. And certainly all of our attendees are also coming at us from a wide variety of unceded territories across BC, and with Mary Van Buren in Ontario as well. So certainly wanted to recognize that. I want to thank our panelists and introduce all of them. So if Mary, Mike, and Terry could turn their cameras on. I see Katie's there. Great, thanks so much. So Katie Fairley is the Industry Standard Practices Consultant with BCCA and the Principal Consultant with Fairley Strategies. Katie focuses on improving project delivery for public and private owners by defining strategies, best practices, and risk mitigation for delivery methods, contracts, and procurement. Additionally, she promotes and advocates for fair, open, and transparent construction practices as BCCA's Standard Practices Consultant. So thank you very much for making time for us today, Katie. We're sure grateful to have you here. Terry Brown, a principal of STBR Consulting Limited. Terry spent 25 years with Quebec Contract Limited, leading ICI and multi-residential projects. In 2009, he launched his own construction consulting and project management company. As a journeyman carpenter, Gold Seal certified project manager, and certified director with a Bachelor of Science from UBC, he is well qualified to chat with us today. So welcome, Terry. Thanks very much for being here. Mike Demers is with the Mike Demers Law Corporation, As a well-respected lawyer in the construction realm for over 30 years, Mike acts primarily for contractors and a select group of owners. Mike advises clients on tendering, construction contract drafting, dealing with ongoing project disputes, builders' liens, and finally the resolution of claims through trial, mediation, or arbitration proceedings. Thanks so much, Mike, for being here. We're certainly anxious to hear your perspectives on this topic today, so looking forward to that. And last but not least, the wonderful Mary Van Buren. Thanks so much for being here, Mary. Mary's the president of the Canadian Construction Association, and she's well into her morning over there in Ottawa. And so Mary is a proven leader with an exceptional track record in advancing member interests by introducing innovative world-class member services, promoting the value of the profession, and advocating adoption of technology and standards to improve professionalism. So again, we're really grateful that you're making some time for us today, Mary, and we certainly are looking forward to your input on this. To all our members that are on the line, thank you so much for well, I have to say, it was all of you that made this happen. We've had many members reaching out, asking us for some guidance on the issues around fixed price contracts during this volatile market time. And because of that, our goal here at the VRCA is to make sure that the things that are most important to you are the things we address. So within 24 hours of posting this session, we had almost 200 of you signed up. So we'll probably get close to 300 today. And so we're going to just fly right at it. So Katie, I'm going to turn off my camera just because we're going to have so many. Oh, I'm sorry. Chris Atchison, do you mind turning on your camera and for a moment? I'd like to also introduce Chris Atchison. He is the president of the BC Construction Association. My apologies, Chris. We're really grateful to have Chris on the line as well. While he's not a specific member of the panel discussion, he has graciously agreed to participate today and be available to answer any questions that any of our members might have as they relate to the provincial level. With regards to questions from everyone on the line, because of the number of people, what I'm going to ask you to do is please type in your questions into the chat room. And after the panel part of this event is done, we're going to open it up to the Q&A and I'll read those questions out. So that's all the housekeeping for now. So Katie, perhaps I'm going to turn off my camera, and if you could get us started off with some of your observations as the standard practices consultant with BCCA and someone who is immersed in this industry. So I'd like to start off with your insights on this. So take it away.
Thanks so much, Donna. Yeah, I think I think you've already set the stage a little bit by saying, this is member driven. I think the last month, I mean, we've all known that, obviously there's supply chain issues, there's cost escalation issues. We've seen that for months, heading into years. So I think what has changed the most is, like I said, in the past month, I think the level of panic, either emails or calls that I'm getting, from members saying, what are my legal rights? You tell me my legal rights. And the answer is, one, I'm not a lawyer, so talk to Mike. But also the flip side of that is owners, and I get to speak to a lot of the big public sector owners provincially in my role, and they're as equally maybe not panicked, but concerned and frustrated by what they're seeing out there as well. And I think the folks that I'm talking to the most, are probably general contractors saying, oh, I've got this notice from a sub, cost escalation due to fuel, or insert anything into that. I think. I think the big one is contractors are looking for a silver bullet. What in their contract, hopefully a CCDC with some light supplementaries, or a CCA1. What is in there that's going to protect me from this? And it's not the same as, I think it's a GC10. That allows that when there's changes in the laws or tariffs, that there can be a change in the contract price that recognizes that. So, yeah, unfortunately, unless you've got an escalation clause in your contract, it becomes a bit more of a nuanced discussion. And I think the big one, I know Terry, who's out of the Okanagan, he'll talk about this project, but the city of Kelowna tendered a project. By the time they had to increase the budget halfway through the tendering process, so it got to, I think, 5.5 million for a pedestrian overpass. When it closed, there was two bidders, and the bid prices were 16 million and 18 million. So, I think that's the other thing, is that owners are not adjusting their budgets to the reality right now. And I would just say the other one that I've been getting a lot of calls from consultants on is the progressive release of holdback. I think that that's always been a remedy or an option under the Builders Lien Act, but now it seems like it's actually being used on more and more projects. There was one where the electrical panel wasn't going to arrive for, I think it was 8 months from basically, completion of most of the work till the panel arriving. And so, they were arranging to release, all of the holdback. And I think that's another sign of certainly of supply chain issues, but also the pressures in the marketplace as well.
Well, thanks so much, Katie. Yeah, that really sets the stage. It's not a single topic issue. There's a lot of nuances here and a lot of concerns. Mary, could you maybe give us a little perspective on what you're seeing at the national level?
Yeah, thank you. And I'll touch on some of the points that Katie mentioned as well. Certainly, this has been something that we've been trying to address for a long time in terms of having a long-term national infrastructure strategy to avoid booms and busts. And so right now we're at this unenviable position of having a shortage of workforce, a shortage of supplies, partly due to COVID, partly due to economic conditions around the world. And we're at a time when we're seeing significant infrastructure investment. So, this is one of our messages, is we really need to be, as a country, better at planning so that all the pieces line up and we don't find ourselves in these difficult situations. And certainly the federal government staff have made many presentations to them on this very issue. And we have found them to be an open and flexible owner. If we look back to even COVID, they have reimbursed already more than $50 million to contractors for things like PPE, so things that were out of your control. So we are seeing them to be quite an open owner. And so we are also asking them to be similarly flexible in this situation. And quite frankly, they're motivated to be. They want you to be successful, and they want their projects to be completed. So we like to use them as an example of a good owner, and certainly happy to share any examples where they've been flexible. And also offer that if you are working with the federal government on projects and you're finding they are not being flexible, to let us know, and we will certainly be happy to address that on your behalf with them.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, it's good to have you on our team. Thank you very much. Having that representation at the national level is certainly meaningful and impactful for all of us. So thank you. Mike, I want to turn it to you now quickly, if we could. Shouldn't the contracts be providing us with some protection? What can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess you look at the title of today's talk is fixed price contracts in a volatile market, and that says it all. Terry's comment that a deal is a deal is a deal is exactly right. Without sounding like a smartass, what part of fixed price contract do you not understand, right? And so the contract, the written document, is just a piece of paper that is intended to reflect the commercial deal that was reached between the parties. And an owner would typically say to a general contractor, well, that's why I entered into a fixed price, because I did not want to take the risk of price escalation. And the GC says the same thing to the supplier or the subcontractor, right? We've got a fixed price contract for this. A deal's a deal. Too bad. That's where the risk lied. And fundamentally, that's the position the parties find themselves in the CCDC documents and the CCA1 subcontract today, because of what Terry described as the unprecedented nature of the cost escalation. The anticipated cost escalation far exceeds what the parties thought the risk was that they were taking on when they signed the document. And unfortunately, the contracts that are in play out there today typically don't provide any relief to the general contractor vis-a-vis the owner, or the subcontractor supplier vis-a-vis the general contractor, with respect to the price escalation and supply chain issues that are currently facing everybody that's participating in this call. Traditionally we've been using the CCDC2 and the CCA1 because they're fixed price contracts, because they provide cost certainty. That can be contrasted with the 5B, for example, which was set up to be on a cost plus basis until the owner and the construction manager are in a position to really lock down prices and get some price certainty. And that may come into more prominent use going forward. But in terms of the contracts that are currently out there that people on this call have signed up for, Katie's comment about the silver bullet, there is no real silver bullet. If you didn't take advantage of the cash allowance provisions in those contracts, right, where you could have said, look at, we don't know what lumber prices are going to be or steel prices are going to be when we go to order it, so let's do a cash allowance so that we can fix the price in one sense. Owner knows that that's the sort of baseline, and they're only paying additional if it goes up, and they get a credit if it goes down. But beyond that, there is no silver bullet in terms of the cost escalation. You may be able to make an argument that you get some time extension associated with supply chain issues. I say may because that's not at all clear, but that still doesn't deal with the cost issue that you're going to face and the price increases that you're still going to have to deal with down the road, even though you may get a time extension. So for the contracts that are currently in place, there's not a lot of relief available to you. There are no real silver bullets. I did want to pick up on what Terry said about contracts going forward. And I think we as an industry need to get smarter about what we're doing and take a harder look at the traditional contract methods that we've been using with these fixed prices. And look, I get it. The industry is used to dealing with them. Owners are used to having that price certainty. But when you get into situations like this, and COVID was the same way, right? You think back 2 years, oh my God, what is this thing? And everybody was opening up their contract and trying to figure out how to deal with this thing. We've gotten smarter over the last 2 years about how we deal with that and how we allocate the risk and what we put into our contracts. I think we need to do exactly the same thing with respect to cost escalation issues and supply chain issues. We as an industry need to get smarter about how we deal with it so that people can survive, people can thrive, and owners can get the benefit of a robust, healthy construction industry.
Thanks so much, Mike. Yeah, it certainly sounds like we're going to have to get innovative with this. We're going to need to think outside the box, and you know, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. So we're going to have to get creative with this. Mary, actually, this could be an interesting time for you to tell us a bit about how they're getting creative across the country. I know there's something that's being referred to as the Quebec solution. Maybe there's something innovative here that you could share with us that might shine a little ray of sunshine on this topic.
Yeah, thank you for that. There is some light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not the train about to hit you. So we can take a page out of Quebec's book. So what has happened is that the ACQ, so the BCCA equivalent in Quebec, has been working with the SQI, which is your equivalent provincial body looking after infrastructure investment. And they have negotiated a contract clause which will allow for reimbursement to the contractor for the escalation. So they've negotiated something like 200 different types of materials that would be included. So everything from concrete, steel used in plumbing, HVAC, etc., wood products. And the index is based on Stats Canada pricing. So Stats Canada reviews what the cost is. And so how it works is that, you know, you put your bid in at whatever, $20, a whatever, a meter, a pound, whatever it happens to be. And then when you're awarded the contract, if the price is now $30, then that's the price that you're able to charge. And so it's a great way to provide protection to the contractor, given again how long it can take between the period when you are bidding and the time that you get awarded. And the Quebec government, it's on their website. It's in pilot right now. It's apparently doing quite well, and all the parties involved are finding it to be a good solution. And it's, you know, there's a spreadsheet and there are all kinds of tools to help contractors do this. So we are very encouraged. And again, you know, thank ACQ and the Quebec provincial government for taking this leadership role. And anybody who's interested in it, let me know, because both ACQ and the Quebec provincial group, the SQI, have said that they would be happy to share that with your province or with municipalities and to show how they're doing it. So I think this bodes well, and again, shows that there's keen interest for owners to have contractors be successful in the projects.
Thanks so much, Mary. Yeah, I'm sure you will be hearing from our members on that. It's you know, it's that innovation that we're talking about, and having somebody a few steps down the road already that we can learn from and you know, get a few steps ahead ourselves. Certainly would be grateful for that information. So thank you. Katie, you know, it seems like communication is going to be pretty key in all of this. You're known industry-wide for your excellent communication skills, so maybe you could, well, I certainly know you that way. Maybe you could, you know, help us out with setting the stage for some of the conversations that our members are going to have with owners, our general contractors with owners, our trade contractors with their generals. Do you have any suggestions for how to get those conversations going in a positive direction?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll speak a little bit from what I'm hearing from owners and kind of their frustrations with this. But I'll first say I can get quite frustrated with owners because, in my opinion, at the end of the day, all the risk rests with them because, do you want your asset or not? Do you want it improved? Do you want it built? And I find it quite frustrating sometimes how risk adverse owners can be when they're the ones, who ultimately at the end of the day benefit from having their asset. So also, I just wanted to say, somebody in the conversation in the chat box was talking about force majeure, and Mike's going to be covering that later on. But yeah, I think fundamentally, and it's been talked about a couple of times, is like we're talking about individuals. You could be working with one, BC Hydro rep on one contract and have an incredibly, very, very different experience than with another individual, another owner's project manager. And I think that that's a really important item to keep in mind. And we're going to talk about, later on when you're bidding projects, but, asking who is going to be the contract admin, who is the owner's project manager, who is going to be the architect on the project, on the architect's project manager. Those I think are all valid questions to be RFIing, at this time in the marketplace. I think just want to reiterate Terry's comment, being open and honest, is this going to ruin your company? Are you going out of business? Are you going to be laying people off because of this? I think that, going cap in hand, being honest, putting that personal touch on it can be really beneficial. So just switching gears, like, what can members be doing preparing for these conversations? I think from what I'm hearing from owners, and they've always complained about this, is just getting information passed along to them from the GC, from the subs with no context and no analysis, let's say. And I would even say right now, some of the emails I'll say, and then follow up with a phone call from the GCs is, they haven't done their due diligence as to whether or not they think that claim or that notice of potential change in contract price is valid. And I think it's, kind of now's the time to do that due diligence. And I would say the big one is, showing the data, showing the facts, showing the proof of costs and the impact, including to productivity of any of these delays or the price increases as well. Under a CCDC contract, you provide notice and the details come later. I would suggest to avoid freaking out your owner is to provide that as quickly as possible and even put a date in there when it can be provided. I've been asking owners in preparation of this session, what do you want to see? What's the best way for them to kind of prepare, let's say, how they receive these notices. And what they really want to know is, what mitigation methods have you used so far? What have you tried to do to mitigate, that cost increase prior to coming out, and asking, or providing notice of a change in contract price. So I think, I think that, comes down to you're going to have a conversation. There isn't that silver bullet in a contract. I think all too often, I think owners in particular, they don't want to have conversations. They go like, this is in the contract, just do it. But I think, this is going to be a situation where you do have to talk to them. And yeah, like I said, just get all the data, show everything that you've tried to do. And I think, we'll say this a number of times, that this doesn't help you in your current contracts, but if you don't like it, don't bid, don't submit a price, don't chase the project. There's other work out there, and sometimes the best projects are the ones that you don't win, right? So yeah, I would say don't be afraid of the conversations. I think maybe just the other point, and this is an owner said this to me yesterday, is they'll have a great OAC meeting with their GC and maybe even their major trades, and like they leave the meeting feeling good, and at the end of the day they get a notice in writing. And, they're human beings too, they take that home. And so I personally don't think that there's anything wrong with, kind of giving advance notice, like don't hide that away. Again, it's that cap in hand idea. And I think specifically to the trades and the GCs on the call are going to get really uncomfortable with this, is that depending on the severity and the materiality of the impact to your business, you may want to go directly to the owner. I think you need to consider that. Again, the GCs on the call are going to get, nervous about that. But if your business is on the line, pull out all the stops.
Wow, Katie, that's such great advice. A lot of, meaty information there that people can use. And it seems to me the common theme in what you said was being reasonable. Are you making a reasonable effort to mitigate what's happening as the GC, as the trade? And are you, keeping those lines of communication open and transparent with the owners as hard as those conversations will be? Thanks for that, Katie. Terry, it sounds like the relationship with the owner is really critical. So I'm just wondering what qualities you might see that would help an owner to be considered, an owner of choice, for example. What do you think they need to take on to be that owner of choice?
Thanks, Donna. That's a good question. And, I chuckle because with Quebec Construction, we had our own little black book, internal black book, where we rated our owners, kept track of how they dealt with us, how they dealt with change orders, payment schedules, wrap up deficiencies, holdbacks. And we would call them A, B, C, D, and we would move to the A's all the time that had the good track record. And so from the owner's perspective, probably the first thing is that we've talked about it already, that human connection back and forth. Are they empathetic? Do they understand your situation? Are they fair? Do they pay on time? You guys all know that already with either the GC or the owner that you deal with. We in our industry are reluctant to say no to somebody to their face or to complain to their face. We kind of bite the bullet. We're a little bit worried about the next job. We're a little bit worried about them blacklisting us somewhere along the line. And we don't stand up as we should. And as I said earlier, we have a commodity that the owners need right now. And so, emphasize that, not aggressively or incorrectly. One of the things, and I relate to that overpass here that Katie alluded to earlier. Initial budget was 4.5 million. If normally in a 4.5 million job, you'd get 6, 8, 10 bidders. And unfortunately, Kelowna is not known for not having a lot of onerous conditions. And the industry's been trying to work with them, and they have their own opinions. And so in the case there, 6 out of the 8 walked, and the last 2 added tons and tons of risk money because of the 10, 20, 30 pages of onerous conditions. So if they do get the job, they can manage it. So I think, my message to the owner would be, be sensitive to the market conditions, adapt your requirements, stick to industry standard documents, whether they're CCA or CCDC or BCDC, minimize your supplementary conditions, and then we in the industry can respond to that. There's ministries at the provincial level right now, there's ministries and agencies that are writing into their contracts a clause called a supervening event, and that I looked it up in the Insider Law Dictionary. Supervening event is a compensation event, a relief event, an excusing event, a force majeure, or an eligible change. And so they're writing that into their contracts on the bigger projects right now. That's a positive change. And the intent there is they do set a threshold of whatever it is, $1 million on the bigger projects, maybe 5 million on the mega projects, where the contractor does suffer some consequences. They've taken some of the risk and they suffer, but once they hit a threshold, beyond that, the owner accepts that responsibility, and the contractor has to document it. There's one project I know that has got 69 supervening events registered already. They're in the final year of a 3-year contract, and that was written in, and they're just suffering, and so they're able to survive by using the language that the owner put into the contract from day one. So I think, the owner can look at a cost plus scenario, and that's basically fair to both the owner and the contractor. The owner gets exactly what they pay for. He's not paying for any risk money. Contractor knows they've got the risk, so they can be very competitive on their pricing. And that's a good approach. The owner does not get the price certainty, but they only get what they pay for. They only pay for what they get. They don't pay for that whack. So there's a number of ways, the CCD C5B, construction management, which is a cost plus. You have to look at a way of protecting the subs. Hopefully the sub bidding can be sequential so that the trades have a defined scope of work and a defined time period, or they get some escalation clause written into their agreements. Otherwise, I think owners are going to have a tough time getting the bidders. The bidders, whether they're trades or generals, are going to move to those owners that are sensitive to the unprecedented times that we're in right now.
Thanks so much, Terry. With all the stakeholders involved here, being mindful of the fact that everyone's working ultimately towards the same goal, and trying to remove as much as possible anything that is adversarial in it. I know that that's sort of the nature of the beast in some aspects of it, but in times like these, we certainly need to be looking at ways where everybody can be rowing in the same direction. Mary, I know you've got some examples of when owners are taking charge, for example, with supply chain issues. You touched on it a bit earlier. Could you maybe expand on that a bit more for us?
Yeah, for sure. So if we look at the macro level, why is it happening? And I mentioned this a bit earlier. We're all in a competition for these resources. Australia, UK, USA, Europe, they're all on massive infrastructure investment projects. And so even before COVID and you take away the disruption from that, there has been this trend of getting these materials, which has been increasingly difficult. The other thing is that Canada is not as business friendly as other countries, as we know. Of course, we think we're a great country, and we are, and we all love to be here. But from a business perspective, we don't necessarily get the share of investment that other countries do. And then, unfortunately, Canada's trade infrastructure, we've fallen in our rankings to 32nd. So our reputation as a great trading nation, has really fallen. So as a country, we've got to get back to that. We need to invest in our trade infrastructure. And we've been working with the Western Canada Road Builders and Heavy Construction Association. We would like to have $20 billion invested in that. So that would certainly help with this flow of goods and services to help with the supply. Another thing that's being considered is maybe we need a North American supply chain and really strengthen that. We've been more focused on getting our goods and services from China. And again, with what's been going on, that's obviously proven to be more of a challenge. And certainly we need to keep diversifying where our supplies come from. And we've seen that in the budget where some money has been set aside to invest in Canada's own supply chain. So that's kind of at a macro level. What's happening on more of a local level is that we're hearing about folks warehousing materials, so they're buying in advance. They're looking at what they've purchased in the past, and they're just making those purchases now so that they can have some certainty around price and certainty around getting the supplies themselves. The other thing is that we have heard that owners do recognize it's taking too long. So from the time that they put the RFP out until the time the contract's awarded, we've seen the world has changed, and they're recognizing that they've got to get better at accelerating that whole process. And last but not least, we've also been hearing some owners buying the materials themselves because they don't know who's going to get the contract, and they want to make sure that they've got their supply of their critical materials. So that's another interesting area. And I know that Mike wanted to comment on the implications of using an owner's supply of materials. So Mike.
You're muted there. Mike, you're muted.
Generally, me muted is how people like me best. I just wanted to pick up on Mary's point on the owner supplied materials, and it gives me the willies because almost inevitably every time I've seen it, the owners do two things, or have typically in the past done two things. One of them is they want you to waive all claims you may have relating to late delivery of their materials or problems with their materials, all that kind of stuff. So you're still taking on a risk, even though you're not the one responsible for the materials. The second thing is oftentimes they'll want to use what we call novation, which means you step into the shoes of the owner and take over that supply contract. So the owner may have negotiated a favorable price with a particular overseas supplier that they're used to using, but they want you to then take over that contract, and so you have all the risk associated with that contractor or that supplier. So you need to be really, really careful with owner supplied materials. I think it's a great idea. I think it really helps in getting cost certainty for owners and for everybody involved in the construction project. But for the GCs who are looking at a situation like that, just be careful about the risks that brings with it that you may not be used to.
Thanks for that, Mike. Actually, while you're chatting there, I'm wondering if you can go a little further on risk. Who, from your perspective, who should be bearing the risk of cost escalation?
Yeah, well, I think it depends on who's asking the question. Katie, I think already expressed an opinion that the owner should be bearing the risk here, and that's the easy target in this discussion. Her point, and I think it's a really valid point, Katie, is ultimately it's the owner that's getting this end product, and that end product should represent the market value of everything that goes into it. And so if you subscribe to that philosophy, then increases in the market value of those inputs should be borne by the party that ultimately benefits from the increased market value of that thing. And look, I know as a public owner, the concept of market value doesn't really translate well, certainly very different than for a private owner, but conceptually that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I've heard from owners is that's all well and good, but it creates endless difficulties with my financing folks. The people that are providing me financing for this project want cost certainty. They want to know that the amount they're financing is going to be sufficient to cover off the costs of this project. And so even something like cash allowances, which makes perfect sense from the perspective of the owner and the contractor, some financiers say no, that creates too much uncertainty in terms of what the final value of this project is, and that upsets our financing model, and so we're not going to finance it. So it may be that financing piece needs to have a second look at how they're valuing projects and what they're doing here. The other thing from an owner's perspective, in fairness to the owner, is cost certainty is something that's really important to them, because escalating costs may make a project unviable once the final price comes in, and so that creates difficulties for the owner. Now, others on this teams may be suggesting, well, that doesn't mean the contractor and the trade should be making up that shortfall so it does become viable for the owner. But we have to recognize that that's a very important factor for owners to take into account. Do you mind, Don, if I just answer a question that was in the chat at this time?
Yeah, please go right ahead,
Okay.
Mike. Thanks.
So one of the comments was, what do you suggest for public owners who aren't really flexible with budgets as they were approved in previous years? That's a really valid point. The problem is you can't let the budget process drive the construction process. Just because you've got $1 million approved doesn't mean your project's going to cost $1 million, right? The two aren't connected. I have in mind the Burrard Street SkyTrain station that was going to be shut down for years to refurbish it, and it gets canceled because of the true cost of what this is going to cost is outside of budget and needs to be rethought. So I think public owners need to think about the budget process and see if that needs to change in these times. General contractors. So why shouldn't the general contractor take the risk? Look at, if I'm an owner, I'm going to say, I'm hiring you because you're the one with the experience, right? You're the one with all the contacts for subcontractors and suppliers. You've been doing this for a long time. You know what costs what. You know how long things take. You should take that risk. And that's fair for typical risks. Contractors are in the business of managing risk. That's what they do, and that's what they get paid for. But when you've got escalations and supply shortages like we're facing now, those are unusual risks or unprecedented risks, as Terry called them, and contractors aren't used to managing those because they're almost unmanageable. How do you as a contractor price escalation for some of the commodities that we've seen? Lumber prices a few years ago, or last year, I guess, or 2 years ago, steel, concrete now. If you said, well, to cover myself, I'm going to have a 200% contingency factor on my supply, your bid price would be so high that you'd never get a job, even though that escalation may appropriately reflect the market, what the market is going to do by the time you have to buy that stuff. Contractors, like owners, can buy product up front or as soon as they're awarded the contract to lock in prices. That's what the owners will say. But that means just increased financing costs for a contractor for somebody else's project. And there's a big fairness issue there. One of the other comments is that was on the chat was, now the majority of subcontractors are guaranteeing their bid for 15 days only. For public tenders, what are VRCA's recommendations for a GC to mitigate the clause, bid shall remain open for acceptance by owner for a period of 60 days from the receipt of the bid? So I just wanted to touch on that. I am not giving anyone legal advice, and you should talk to your own lawyer about it. But there was a case involving that very situation where the subs bid had a much shorter irrevocability period or price period than was the owner's irrevocability period. And what the court held was that when the contractor carried the sub's bid, it did so within the 15-day period set out in the sub's bid. And so the contract didn't have to be awarded within that 15 days. It just had to be carried within that 15 days. So that was good for the contractor, bad for the subcontractor. But that is something that you should talk to your lawyer about, because it's a really interesting case that has repercussions for both of those parties. So.
Oh, I was just going to say, Mike, I just wanted to follow up on some of that, but I thought yeah, if you're, keep going, because I'm learning a lot.
Sorry. The other comment was, as a company, we are looking to add an appendix with a lot of these topics: escalation, supply shortages impacting schedule when signing a contract for a project. If we can get this in the contract prior, does this allow us to better push the issues we are up against? 100%. There's no question about it. It gets right back to the fundamental point of how have the parties commercially decided how these risks are going to be dealt with and allocated? So if you can get that in there, great. There's two issues that you got to think about. If you're including that kind of an appendix on a public tender or a private tender, if it's a true tendering situation, you're probably going to be materially non-compliant, which is going to cause you some problems. The second thing is you're going to run into issues with an owner who's going to say, well, we like your price, we don't like any of this, so you're either bidding on our conditions or you're out. What do you want to do? But I think it's exactly that approach that everybody in the industry needs to make, regardless of what level you're at, is just figure out what the issue is and how is that issue going to be managed by everybody on the team, whether you're a subcontractor, general contractor, an owner, or a financing entity. One last comment. Trade partners should pull together to clearly demonstrate the issue we are facing. There is strength in numbers, but transparency is key. That concept of transparency being key is really, really critical. If I'm an owner and you're coming cap in hand, to use Terry's terms, looking for more cash on the fixed price contract, I'm concerned that you either blew your bid or you've got a boat payment or a mortgage payment you want to make, and you've got your eye on that new Mercedes, and you just want to line your pockets. And so you absolutely have to open the kimono and be completely transparent about what your costing was, what changed, what you did to mitigate it, and why you couldn't have avoided the situation you're in. That's the only way that you're going to get a fair hearing at frankly any level. And if you're hoping to put a bunch of margin into those kinds of commodities and not disclose to the owner that's where your profit was, you're going to have a practical issue. Sorry, I've taken too much time.
No, that's fantastic. That's exactly what this session is for. Thank you so much, Mike, and don't stop there. Katie, did you have some comments that you wanted to add to that as well?
Yeah, I think the question around, what do owners do with their budgets? I think the flip side of that is, what can the GC and the trades, do to mitigate that risk of an owner's budget? And I think, at the time of bidding or at the time of submission, RFI what the budget is if it's not disclosed. I mean, transparency goes a bunch of different ways. And, it's something that VRCA and BCCA have beat the drum on, forever, is the disclosure of construction budgets. Nobody's bidding to that. No one's like, this isn't Price is Right rules, the closest without going over. So, I think, I don't know if I would be bidding a job right now without the owner disclosing what the budget is. And I think further to that, I think it's asking the owner, when did you do this budget? Who was your QS who did it? Asking all of those questions, I think, are really material. And if an owner's not willing, to open their own kimono, there's other owners out there that might. And it's, again, making that tough business decision as to whether or not, you go after, that project with that owner. And I think, yeah, the point that, just echoing what Mike said, if you append to your bid or your submission, your own proposed supplementaries, and I think at that point they would be proposed, yeah, you could be very easily materially non-compliant. And, that time and money that you spent and your sub spent putting together a fixed price bid could be, turfed. I think just on the comment of validity periods, I'll skim through, a couple of bid documents a day just to see what's out there. But, if folks are seeing 60, 90-day validity periods from public sector owners, I would really encourage you to, let Donna know, let myself know, because that is something that, we can go and try to educate that owner, about the market conditions that, maybe doesn't help you with when you have subs, I would say quite rightfully bidding, we can hold our price for 24 hours kind of scenario, but that's the kind of education we can provide to those owners, but we need to know that information. So I would really say, reach out to Donna, and myself, and that, that's definitely a service that we can provide and that we do provide.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Yeah, we certainly encourage all our members to use us as the resource that we are. That's what we're here for. So thanks for pointing that out, Katie. And so much of what you're talking about, timing is so key to all of this. And certainly, Terry, with your story about the pedestrian overpass in Kelowna, going, I think you said 4.6 and then all the way up to 18. I mean, that's a matter of timing. So Terry, I also wanted to, just while we've got you here, what about bonding? What can you tell us about bonding in this whole scenario?
Thanks, Donna. And full disclosure to start, I'm not a big fan of bonding. I've been burnt a couple of times over my career, but you've got to realize that a bond is not a panacea for the problem we're in right now. The bonding company has a couple of ways that they can meet their obligations according to the bond if there's a failure of either a trade or a general. But the reality is that their cap is the value of the contract. Even if you've got a performance bond, and a performance bond, everybody thinks they're going to perform the work to completion. They're not. They're going to perform to the cap of the contract. So that does not recognize any escalation, right? They'll hit the same 80% that the contractor might have hit, and then they'll walk and it doesn't finish the project. A bond does not recognize latent deficiencies because they've hit that cap. A bond does not recognize the warranty period because they've hit that cap. They've put a cap on the bond, which is the value of the initial contract. And once that is achieved, they're no longer liable. So, there's a false sense of security that I've got a bond, I'm going to be okay. Even if you're a trade and there's a labor and material bond, you're in exactly the same position. It's not going to protect you from any escalation in costs. It's only going to complete the work or make you whole up to the value of your original contract. So, the bond is not a solution in this scenario unless you're going to convince all the parties to bond at 150% of the contract value or 120%, whatever the realities of the bonding value are. So we use bonds regularly. The government uses bonds regularly. My issue is that they're not jumping to the table immediately after a failure and cutting checks. Province of Newfoundland, when they have a bond job where there's a failure, they don't even go to the bonding company. They just retender. They've had such bad experiences over the year, they just don't even call on it. They take the work that's left and retender it and get the work done, especially on highways because they've got a short construction period there. So a bond is not a panacea. It's a tool, but it doesn't guarantee to either the trades or the owner that the project's going to get completed in these times.
Thanks, Terry. I think the message is there's no blanket protection for anyone anywhere in this. There's going to be nuances, and there's going to be, we get back to that word reasonable. Katie, what have you got to say about that?
Well, I don't have anything to say about that, but I wanted to draw Terry's attention to Mo's comment at 8:43 a.m. Quite selfishly, I would love to have Terry's comment on the scenario that Mo's outlined, and maybe Terry can read it through and then answer in a couple minutes. But I would love to know Terry's thoughts on Mo's comment.
I just read that, Katie, and there are two comments that are related. One from Judy at 8:53 and one from Jason at 8:47 that really bookend the very issue that we're all talking about.
Could you read out that one and so that everybody's on the same page, and then go ahead and respond to it?
Yeah, I can read out Moes from 8:43. So on paper, everything mentioned today works, but in reality, it is very difficult to enforce any contract clauses. Scenario: a developer builder has a contract with a reinforcing sub with a $1 million rebar supply remaining. Developer is presented with a $500,000 escalation claim. Finding a replacement contractor will cost almost the same. Time loss is a factor considering financing costs. of $150K to $200 a month. The reinforcing contractor is a major supplier, and starting legal proceedings with them destroys a long-term relationship and will hurt the future of the business. How would you approach this scenario, except trying to negotiate a lower escalation claim?
Jerry, did you want to get started on that one?
So, other than somebody walking away from their bid and giving Mike a whole bunch of work, which is likely going to happen over the next couple of years.
Say that again, Terry.
And his
so there is a silver lining to this.
His home phone number is blah, blah, blah. We finished a smaller job for a healthcare facility, year and a half contract. It was, I think our contract was 5.4 million. As we got closer to the end, ready to turn over the owner, we told the owner, our insurance runs out when we turn it over to you. You go get your insurance. They had a look at it, and their insurance evaluated the property at 7.5 million, about 60% more than the contract value. And they freaked. The owner freaked, and the insurance freaked. And that was the reality of the escalation. We had honored our contract. We had completed the contract. But the value of the asset at the end of the job was way more than what the bid price was. And so, we were able to absorb the hit as a big company, but not everybody's going to be able to do that. And that's the business decision that those people have to make. Can they survive? Can they walk away? Can they defend themselves? Or is that scenario, and some of the comments talk about that, is the cost of replacing that going to be greater than the owner coming to the party in that situation? And that's a business decision that the owner's got to make. They may be contractually correct. It doesn't help their bottom line. It doesn't get their asset built. And so if they're prudent and astute, they should be sitting down and having a one-on-one heart-to-heart talk with that individual, because their worst case scenario is probably worse if those trades or generals walk from that project partway through, even if they're bonded.
Mike, did you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I did. Thanks. I wanted, before I do that, I just want to read two other comments because they, as I said, they bookend it. So we've got Jason, who said, we had a health authority vehemently and angrily refused to consider any price relief on products that had over 210% increase since the project started. It doesn't seem that they are sympathetic yet. Now, the other end of that spectrum is Judy. As an owner, we are seeing trades threaten to walk away from their fixed price due to escalation. Is this reasonable? And so those are the two bookends. And what it tells me is it's the same issue, it's the same problem, but people are just looking at it from different perspectives as to how they're impacted. And this gets right back to Mo's point, which is you've got a legal issue in terms of what does the contract say, who bears the risk, and you've got a practical issue. And a lot of lawyers will tell the developer in that scenario, what you do is you write your notice of default letter, you tell them they have to honor their contract, and if they don't, you're going to have to get a replacement rebar supplier, and you're going to sue them for the difference. And that is great in theory. It's crappy in practice because the development stalls. It's not a workable solution, especially when you're talking about a commodity like that where the number of suppliers is very, very limited. And I'm seeing it with drywallers, I'm seeing it with painters, I'm seeing it with a whole bunch of different trades that you wouldn't think it should be an issue for, but just because everybody's stretched so thin, it is. Mo, the best solution is to try and resolve it on a commercial basis, because it's going to cost the developer more money. But in the long run, and this was Terry's point, in the long run, you've got to figure out whether you're better off paying some money up front, dealing with that escalation and just moving on, or digging your line in the sand and having a big battle and have everything stall out. You need to take, all sides need to take a commercial view of the situation and come up with something that nobody likes but works for everybody. It's my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Katie, did you have anything that you wanted to jump in and add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've been talking a lot today about relationships, and I do think, all of these are going to have to be dealt with, on an individual case by case basis. But, I'm also reminded of, the famous line from the Godfather, it's not personal, it's business. And I think, that's the other word we've said a ton today is, it's a business decision. And I think that I would say, I can't remember if it was Mike or Terry who said it earlier. We are very good in construction at not saying no, and maybe not being honest and saying yes. And I'd say if is that relationship more important than your business? And I think that if you're at a place where their wives' names or their husbands' names and their kids' names, my guess is that relationship, while it might take a hit for a little bit, it will come back, because fundamentally it's going to come down to business. If you go by the letter of your contract, your dispute clauses, all that sort of stuff, I would say, don't be afraid of that either. Again, it's not personal, it's business. And yeah, the Supreme Court has said we're all sophisticated business owners.
Thanks, Katie. I think the best advice we can take is leave the gun and take the cannoli. Mary?
Yeah, thanks for that. And sorry, we're talking about CCDC contracts and talked about them quite a bit. So I just wanted to make a few comments about CCDC and why we don't have this language around escalation in a really more robust fashion. And we've all been benefiting from years of a very stable environment, and that's been great. And that's why owners have been able to ask for the low cost bid, because everybody knows how to do that. We don't know how to do that right now. We've had some one-off increases. So a few years ago, CCDC looked at some language possibly around escalation due to the carbon tax. And a few municipalities introduced that, Ottawa, Quebec City, for example. And then contractors said, we can manage that. It's sort of a known risk, and it's one. But now we're talking about 200 variables that nobody can manage that. I mean, that's a computer program to try to figure out how you would possibly mitigate against all 200 escalations in price, up, down, and sideways. So I think that's where CCA is at now, that we want to work with our national advisory councils, our GCs and trade contractors in particular, and look at what would be some good common language that we could look at moving forward. It feels like this volatility is going to be around for a while. It's not like we just have to get through 3 months and we're over it. I think we kind of thought that maybe with COVID, that once COVID was sort of behind us, things would go back to be more stable. That doesn't seem to be the trend. So that's certainly one of the things that CCA is as I say, is doing, is looking at what could that language be. And the other part of it is working with our owners to consider different models. Especially in these times, we think having early contractor involvement is critical. Having owners consider looking at the investments over the life cycle and not just the build. We know that, for example, for building sustainably, it's going to cost 10% more upfront, but over the life cycle of the asset, they should see overall reduced costs. So definitely looking at how do we have new models of collaboration to share that risk. And I think that's the message as well. We appreciate that it's not 100% the owner, it's not 100% the contractor. That has to be fair to all and for all to benefit in the ecosystem. So those are some of the things that CCA will be working on in the next little bit.
And Mary, I just have to, conversations we've had in the past, the best advice with anything with a contract, read it. Harry, could you jump in here?
Yeah, and I just want to expand a bit on the CCDC and some of the comments that we made. Both CCDC 5A and 5B, which are construction management, keep in mind that the owner does maintain control of those projects. Mike alluded to the fact owners are looking for price certainty, and certainly there's not necessarily price certainty, but in a couple of the projects that we were involved with as CM, the owner adjusted their expectations based on the budget. So we did a school as we got toward the end of the project. They were running out of money. They significantly decreased the quality of all the hardware. They went from hardware that would last 30, 50 years to the residential stuff that would last 5 years, and they recognized they're going to have to replace it. We did a hotel. Initial requirements were wallpaper, high quality wallpaper on the walls and super high quality carpet throughout. And as we progressed through it, they were getting to their budget. And so we painted the walls and we put in 22-ounce residential carpet, which they knew they again would have to change over time. But they got the project done because they were in control of the end product. So it depends on how those CMs are run. But in a CM, it's the owner that ultimately controls the outcome. And so they do have a bit of the ability to manage the budget as they get toward the end of the project, recognizing, the implications of lowering some of the elements or the quality of the products that are in there.
Thanks, Terry. As we expected, this time has flown by. So what we're going to do right now is, Mike, we know that force majeure is a question that's very important to many of the people on the line. So we're going to end for now with you talking about the force majeure factor. And when you're done with that response, then I'd like to open it up to our panelists to look at the questions in the chat room. I know you've been reading them as we go. And then, with your willingness, you let us know which ones you want to take on and raise your hand when you're ready to go. And we'd also like to bring in Chris Atchison for that portion of it as well. And if he's willing, I'd like to introduce our board chair, Craig Mitchell, and bring him in for some of his insights as well. But Mike, if you want to take on the force majeure question, that would be wonderful.
Sure. The force majeure is interesting for the lawyers. For, 100 years, I shouldn't be telling anybody this, but we lawyers have been putting in these force majeure clauses in the contracts without even thinking about them, just boilerplate precedent, not really turning our minds to how they work. That all came to a head with COVID. And all of a sudden, lawyers were actually reading what they had been putting in their contracts for the last 50 years and trying to figure out, okay, so what does this mean? How does that impact schedule extension, cost extension, all sorts of things? And really focused on what force majeure is all about. British, again, I'm not giving anybody legal advice. If you want legal advice, you need to talk to your own lawyer. Force majeure in British Columbia and all of the provinces in Canada, except for Quebec, is different than most people think. Force majeure is what your contract says it is. And if you've worked on industrial projects or large commercial projects, you'll often have force majeure clauses that go on for paragraphs and paragraphs to say what it is and what it isn't. Typically, what it does is if there is an act of God or something out of your control, or more likely a defined list in the contract, typically all it does is give you a time extension. It almost never, and I'd say 99.99 times out of 100, never gives you money associated with it. So it is not the silver bullet that you're looking for that Katie talked about. What it does is it provides you an excuse as to why you can't perform the contract in the time you said you would perform it. That's all it does. In BC and other provinces, common law provinces, one of the concepts that has dealt with is what we call frustration. And frustration is where the underlying commercial reason for the contract has changed so significantly that you shouldn't be bound by it. And unfortunately for the people on this call, there have been lots and lots of attempts in Canada and throughout the world to say that because of a change in economic conditions, the contract is frustrated, and therefore I get out of it. So for the GCs and the trades that are on the call, I've had a 210% cost escalation in my supplies. I should be. I'm going to lose money on this project now. I shouldn't have to comply with my contractual obligations. The courts have almost always said, too bad, a deal's a deal. That's not to say that there won't be a unique factual situation. And candidly, with the war that's going on right now in Ukraine, we may be unfortunately very close to seeing whether we're in a situation like that. But barring something almost of that level of seriousness, simply the fact that it's no longer profitable for you to do the work, or your costs have escalated beyond what you could have expected at the time, is probably not going to provide relief for you under under the frustration provisions of the common law, and almost certainly not under the force majeure provisions in the contract. So if you look at the CCDC 2 or the CCA 1 subcontract, the force majeure concept just gives you time extensions, no money at all. So it's not likely going to help you, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Thanks for that clarity. I hope that helped that many of you. That was a very important question. So we'll wrap up the panel portion with that. So thank you, Mike. And I'm putting Craig Mitchell on the spot. I didn't ask him this ahead of time, but if he's willing to turn on his mic, if he's available to participate, and Chris Atchison, if you're able to turn on your camera and mic. Sorry, Craig, your camera and mic too, if you're available. And then I'd like to open it up to all of you. Katie, I think, just dropped off for a second. She'll be right back on, I think. Were there some questions in the chat room there that you'd like to tackle first?
Can I just, I think one point I'd like to make, and maybe Mike can jump in as well, is that you know, if as far as the bidding process, submission process, you know, more and more owners are explicitly removing contract A. And I think the message needs to be is carefully read your procurement documents. You know, you might not be under contract A. If an owner is using an RFP process, even when they're asking for a stipulated fixed price as part of that, you know, they may be allowing for negotiation, which really, you know, again, talk to a lawyer. This isn't legal advice. You may not be bound to hold those prices. And that would likely extend down into the subs who bid under that contract. So I think, you know, now more than ever is to know what is that nuance. Has the owner removed contract A? You see that a lot from the municipalities, more so than the larger public sector owners in the province. But that would be maybe what I'd leave you with.
Thanks, Katie. Sorry, we're just trying to enable Craig's camera and mic. It was turned off there. Chris, can we bring you in here for a bit of the perspective at the provincial level?
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Donna. It's been excellent to not only hear from the panel, but the level of engagement in the chat has been really insightful as well. So from a provincial perspective, I mean, I hopefully everybody knows that we're in the middle of not only some unprecedented times, but we're also in the middle of BC's annual Construction and Skilled Trades Month. And so this really is setting us up for our procurement week next week. Ongoing advocacy that we're doing is just relentless on this subject with our provincial counterparts. And just today, actually, BCCA released our annual industry survey and spring 22 stat pack, and I'll post those links in the chat. I didn't want to kind of preoccupy everybody when there was so much rich content going on. But what those documents show is how valuable this entire industry is, which is not the question of the day or not in dispute. But we are representing an industry that is under more and more pressure every day. And we're seeing that feedback come through our surveys. There's more projects to build, as Terry alluded to. There's more labor and material shortages, which everybody is aware of. The higher costs, more taxes. In British Columbia, there's more government and more rules. And of course, we've got the lingering pandemic. The stress that our contractor community is feeling is coming through loud and clear. It's coming through loud and clear on this session, and it's coming through loud and clear through the surveys that BCCA does, as well as the engagement that the regional construction associations are doing. So, I think from what we're taking away from this topic today is that the owners and the contractors need to get this through this time together. There is no silver bullet. We've heard that time and time again. And the only way to do this is to work together on reasonable solutions, face to face, now that we can start to do that, but also know that you've got the power of the industry behind you, giving these same messages to the owners wherever we can. And Katie spoke about that numerous times, and I know Mary has also weighed in on what's happening in other jurisdictions and what's happening with the federal government. So whatever is on the contract page isn't going to change the reality of what's happening in the market. So we need to be reasonable. We need to continue to get face to face on things. As Terry said, know that you're valued. Take confidence in knowing that you're essential. And the volatility, as Mary said, it's here for a while, and we need to settle into this, but not settle for anything that is going to undermine the integrity of our businesses. And I just wanted to pick up on something that Mike said about the importance of transparency when engaging with these types of discussions, but also so being prepared to disclose why it's necessary, why there is urgency, why this is pressing for you. But also take confidence in knowing that type of transparency needs to be a two-way street. So with that, I think just again to say what I've heard has given us confidence for the advocacy work that we will do and continue on your behalf going forward. And then I'll turn it back to the panel for answering any other questions in the chat. Thanks so much, Donna.
Thank you very much, Chris. Craig, my apologies for putting you on the spot, and I just want to say thank you for your willingness to jump on here. I wanted to just introduce you all. We've got so many of our members on the line. Craig Mitchell is our VRCA board chair. Lots of great insights and coming from membership. Craig knows all of the pain of what we're discussing firsthand. And Craig, I just wanted to make sure that you had a minute to say hello and address any of the topics in this discussion that were particularly meaningful to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Donna. And really is such a rich topic. And I think we probably could have gone on for another hour or two here. And yeah, I just wanted to say a lot of thanks to the panelists. I mean, your perspective on this, are really tangible strategies here for a lot of the members here that we can take away from what was discussed here today. I think, one of the items that resonated with me is that, I tended to work in a very collaborative, contractual environment in a lot of the work that I've done, and often found that transparency and the way that we have that relationship with owners up front has tended to resolve a lot of these issues that we face. And I think, again, what I heard here today is a lot of the contractors trying to engage the owners and really, I guess, having that ability to show them that what we are capable of, and being able to present solutions to their problems. And there's always going to be some contractor that's going to take on the risk, and hey, that's the way this business has always been. And I think as we collectively, I look at everyone who's jumped on here today, if we collectively take a stand and start really starting to push back and having those conversations with owners, we can elicit some change in the marketplace. And I think this is such a great time to do that when things are so volatile. So again, awesome topic and great feedback. And I love the questions here today too, because I really think they strike to the heart of what we're talking about. So thanks again.
Thanks so much, Craig, and thanks for jumping on without any notice there. So we've got 5 minutes left. I'd like to give each of you on the panel, a full minute, as short as that is, to sort of wrap up in any way that you'd like to with this. And Terry, I saw that your hand was raised there, so if you don't mind, if we could start with you with whatever comments you want to bring on.
Yeah, being a member of a local, the provincial, and the national association, and having all the representatives here, I would like to suggest another member service, and that is actually to post, owners of choice, post some of these comments on a page and see if we can assist our members in shying away from some of these owners that are not an owner of choice, and maybe shame some of those owners into being a little more responsible in these unprecedented times. I think I, as a member, would love to see that, to be able to go on all of your sites and see exactly which owners are doing what, and that would help me select, the good and bad and the ugly that we're experiencing in the market right now.
Great, thanks, Terry. And I wonder if we wouldn't get some buy-in from the owners as well. They certainly those who are trying to work well with their their GCs would probably be very happy to have that highlighted. So it's a double-edged sword. So thanks, Terry. Mary, can I go to you next? I know you've posted some great information on an upcoming seminar that CCA has on the horizon.
Yeah, thanks for that. And again, thanks for having me on the panel and for all the members on the call. It's great to hear what's top of mind for you. And just wanted to pick up what Terry said about the working together. And, we have a great relationship with BCCA and with the RCAs. And we have seen that in the past where we have collaborated very strongly on important issues. CBAs is just one recent one that comes to mind. And one of CCA's commitments going forward is to do more with the owners. So we have focused primarily on the federal government for obvious reasons, but we think we could do more with the national private owners and working again with our partners to figure out how can we bring these best practices to owners and how can we align on that to represent the industry more strongly. So that's something we're really excited to be doing, and more to come on that.
Great, thank you, Mary. Mike, can we hop over to you next for your final thoughts?
Sure. This is not an us versus them issue. We shouldn't be piling on owners, right? Owners are facing exactly the same cost escalation issues that general contractors are, that subtrades are, that suppliers are. This is an industry issue. Owners are an important and valued part of the industry, just like GCs and subs. So it's an industry problem that is going to need an industry solution, and it's in everybody's best interest, regardless of what tier you operate in, to come up with and participate in a solution that works for everybody. So that's the one takeaway I think for today for me is we're all in this together. Let's figure out what we're going to do and do it right.
Thanks so much, Mike. Thanks very much, Mike. Katie, can we finish with your input here?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think we talk about everybody as like these big behemoths, right? Owners, the health authorities, BC Housing, so much of it becomes individual, becomes just the project. And, somebody gave the example of one owner being, arguably showing no leniency for the pressures that that their project is under. I think the same token, I've heard that same owner, on a different project is being more understanding. I think that comes down to the individual PM, but also the budget on that project. Is the money that they're getting coming from the province for an HVAC upgrade and it magically disappeared on the 31st of March or something like that, right? So I think, I think we just have to be cognizant that it does come down to people. And I love the concept of an owner of choice, but that is such an individual business decision as to how contractors view the risk profile of individual owners and their PMs and the consultants that they're using. So yeah, I think again, it's a case by case basis because there is no silver bullet.
Thanks, Katie. Terry Brown, Mary Van Buren, Michael Demures, Katie Fairley, thank you so much. What an informative 90 minutes. Absolutely jam-packed with great information. Thank you to all our members who took this 90 minutes to spend with us. And I'm sorry, any of the questions that we didn't get to, my apologies for that. This could never have been covered appropriately in 90 minutes, but a great stab at it. So thank you all. For your participation and your interest, and many, many more conversations on this topic to come. So everyone enjoy your long weekend. And just one quick plug for VRCA. We've got our Construction Leadership Forum coming up in Whistler, May 12th, 13th, and 14th. We're almost sold out on it, but we would love to see all of you there, as many of you who can put the time together for that to spend with us. We'd certainly be happy to see your faces in person. So have a wonderful long weekend. Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye.